Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 21st public lecture hosted by NUS Cities. Before we start the event, may I request everyone to either turn off your cell phones or put it on silent. Thank you. For those who don't know about NUS Cities, we are a university-wide, multidisciplinary, open, inclusive, and collaborative platform hosted within the College of Design and Engineering, otherwise known as CDE. Through our collaborations with local and international institutions, we hope to create synergies that extend within as well as beyond NUS. The NUS Cities Public Lecture Series will investigate policies, ideas, and projects developed by urban experts which aspire to create sustainable, resilient, and livable cities. Through the lecture series, we hope to create a platform for discussion and introspection to give momentum to the ongoing research and exploration regarding issues concerning cities. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the evening. Herbert Dreiseitl is an urban designer, landscape architect, water artist, interdisciplinary planner, and professor in praxis. His focus is on creating livable cities and urban landscapes around the world, with a special hallmark on inspiring and innovative use of water. He's an international renowned expert and has realized groundbreaking contemporary projects in the fields of climate resiliency, stormwater management, urban planning, and landscape architecture, like Tanner Springs Park in Portland or Bishan Amokyo Park in Singapore, which we are very much aware of. He has founded Atelier Dreiseitl in 1980, now known as RST, Ramboll Studio Dreiseitl, and developed the Livable Cities Lab. Today, Herbert is an independent consultant for many cities and initiatives throughout the globe. His work integrates regenerative processes, demonstrating a portfolio of site-responsive interventions of community-based urban planning and environmental-sensitive engineering. Through a collaborative network as Harvard GSD Leo Fellow and a regular visiting prof at NUS Cities, Herbert and his wife, Bettina, created DREISEITLconsulting and are currently giving workshops and advice to many initiatives and cities to improve their projects with resiliency and regenerative frame conditions. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you so much for making inviting me here for the introduction, for the words here. And actually, just to say one thing, that Ramboll Studio Dreiseitl is now called Henning Larsen. Probably forgot to say that. Well, I'm really honored, and I'm very happy to be here at the university to speak about the topic unlocking the secret of water, shaping solutions for tomorrow. And the way how I would like to do it is really to look with you on some water experiments in the beginning. And I will always share 3 experiments, and we see how actually these experiments are unlocking basic principles we find on resiliency, on slowing down process, creating different forms and shapes, and basically working really with live energy and with live forms, which is very most interesting how actually to see water. I think we had, 2 weeks ago, we had the talk from Henk Ovik, who was actually talking about worldwide questions on water and how important it is that we internationally are much more careful with water and work more together to see how much we are connected by water, which is most interesting to really think about how Singapore, for example, is depending getting the water from all parts of the world to have here rain and to have enough water. Well, I will also at the second part, I will show some examples, maybe some examples, some of them you might know, but some are also new. And to start with, I just have to do it here. So we will also have to change sometimes the setting to put light on, light off. So I just apologize that we might need sometimes a little bit short breaks for that. So maybe just to start, last weekend I had a wonderful walk through the Japanese garden, at the Jurong Lakes garden, which just opened, I think, a month ago. And I was just looking at structures, at plants, and I actually found this wonderful leaf. And I was thinking I should just bring that as a first one. It is, of course, green and it is blue together. It is landscape type, a little detail, and it is a beautiful way how water behaves. I mean, these are little drops or little pearls which are completely round, completely spherical forms. There's surface tension, and we know that water behaves in a way that, because of the surface tension, it does this. But if we have no gravity, like in space, water actually gets a perfect globe and is actually having a wonderful shape. And I think Henk Ovik also showed wonderful how water is actually surrounding our planet and how fragile it is, how thin it is, and how little it is. Well, just looking a bit more on that, I'm fascinated to find out, a little drop might be for a certain while here, but on the other hand, it is completely connected to the entire globe. It can evaporate, it can travel, it can be very, very far. And actually, it's a very nice quote of some of our colleagues from Penn University who were saying in a very nice book, actually was what is called In the Terrain of Water. And I think Professor Chai Kuhl and I, we have been there. Remember, it was 11 years ago where we had a very interesting conference at Penn University, In the Terrain of Water, and also a book came out of it. And it was an interesting way how looking, so around the world on different universities, everywhere, people are interested in finding out what is this water and how fascinating is it and how can we work with it. For me, I had an interesting experience, and it was also a kind of decision when I said after 35 years, I don't want to be anymore a CEO of a company. I want really to change also my life and commit to water in a different way. I had the chance to be about 2 months in the Central Sahara and actually walk with a Tuareg person basically through the desert. And we had very, very little water, and I had to find with him or trust him completely that he will find in the evening water. And actually, I couldn't see anywhere water, but he said, there is water. Just let's dig here, because this is a place where there's water. And we were digging down maybe 1 meter, and he took a little cap, and indeed, he found water in the middle of the desert. So, and it's interesting, how this kind of being aware that water can be very, very scarce and very, very little water we can have, but we have to find ways how to work with this fragile element. And I find it always interesting to see how nature is working with it. And for example, how little flies in the morning just collect the dew. Yeah, and how actually some of these species, even in the desert, can survive without having rain for maybe 2 or 3 years, and they still live with this amount. What I also learned just going to the Central Sahara for many, many weeks, how interesting the shape and the structure is of landscapes in the Sahara. All this is showing that maybe 500 years ago, there was a big flood of water coming through, and we still see the shapes and the forms, and we see where actually vegetation were left out or were starting to come in, where there is some humidity in the underground still, or is collected there, and we see, how this kind of forms looking like. When we look from a higher perspective, now from space, we can also see the same place now here, and we see the enormous interesting structures on water figures, on a flow, which is here to see, but it's all dry. It only actually happens when it starts to rain, then the structure will come up again. And I will say with that, we do the first experiment, right? Okay, so let's go here, and we will take some light, and I will just do a very simple little experiment, and then we need also to fill up the water. Maybe we take the light a little bit off. Just take this one here. Okay, and we will take the camera, and I hope you can see it then clear enough. So what I'm actually doing here is a very simple thing. I have a plate here, and this plate is plexiglass. It is more or less clean. And I will just open here and let a little bit of water run down. And usually what we would expect and that's what probably will also take place or will happen, is it will have a straight line where the water goes from A to B downhill. So let's just open it. I just hope it can. Okay, the first one was going straight down, but now we already can see there is a lot of things are happening here. It's starting to make curves. It takes left and right-hand side curves. I put maybe a little bit less even. It starts to make all kinds of meander forms. And just let's have a look a little bit on with some color. What is happening? You can see here, there's an inner turbulence happening here. There's even water going backward. Maybe I try this as well here. You can see there's water even standing and going upstream. There's water going upstream, and there's a high speed out here, but very little movement and even inner turbulence here. Look at this one. I hope, can you see it actually, by the way, or is it too difficult? Can you try to get a bit closer? I think this one is really good. We have tested it out this morning. But it's always a surprise. It's always different. It's always a surprise what comes out and how is it. And I just show this here. And maybe we see, and actually when we wait a little while, this whole structure will start again to change. Now, it's interesting. So rivers never stay the same. They always are in a flux of change, of building up, destroying, building up again. And it's usually shaping out on the side where water is calving, and the inner part is where the water is more silent. And fish knows very well where to stay and where to wait until they get the energy and the right moment to jump up to go to the next space where they can actually wait on places maybe here, where it's also a little bit more quiet, here, for example. And then they can go up and go to the next one. So this kind of forms and structures are showing that what we can learn from water, that there is never, very good, there's never actually something which is so that we can say we have fixed it once and it will stay. There is a permanent process of change, of building up, of also destroying and restarting again, which I think is extremely important to learn about what actually nature needs and is doing, because it creates new opportunities. It creates, I would say, even opportunities when there is a kind of disaster. What we call disaster is in nature often opening up, building new opportunities. Well, that's a big question. How can we handle with this kind of principles in our cities? And how can we learn to work with challenges like disasters? How can we actually handle it? Can we do everything so safe that everything is stuck and the same? Or do we have to learn to be more flexible and to create more solutions which are maybe nature-based, which are possible to adapt to new situations, for example, to climate change, to sea level rise? Can we build them so that they are elastic or resilient to different ways of performance? So all these are questions for today, and I would just like to let the students know that this is basically what we are trying to learn also here on the university, of new techniques, of new ways of working in urbanism, of new ways of coming up with solutions in landscape architecture, to find basically this kind of resilient solutions which are more or less mimicking and also doing that how nature is working. By the way, a very nice, beautiful form is always looking different. If we would have more time and let it go and let it run quite a while, we would see that it will not stay like this. It will permanently start to change a little bit. Thank you for putting more water in. Okay, and then maybe I just put a little bit over here. And sometimes it might even be that it will break through and cut again and start a new form. So that maybe is a first little experiment. And everyone can do it, by the way. Some students who might see the first time I show this very often in my classes. You can just take it in your kitchen. You just have maybe a glass plate, and you just take a little bit water, let it dribble down, and just watch what happens. Yeah? And then what I'm just using here, you can take ink. I'm just using calcium permanganate, a color which is showing all the structures and the inner forms. I can actually see how actually water is even flowing up here. Yeah, and I think there are another nice places here. This is standing here. You see also how it is turning from one side to the other side. It's probably what you can see, right? Very good. We have some good photo shooting here to see it very precise and very correctly. So I think this experiment actually, look at this, how it is turning around. I'm always excited to see it because it's always new, it's always surprising, and I can always discover something new. There would be more chances to build you can work with wax, with beeswax, for example. You can work on different forms. And basically what you can study is also here already something what we learn in hydrology on systems, on river systems, on flow systems. You can learn this already with very, very first experiments. So maybe with that we just leave this experiment and go to a next point. I will just use slides now in between, and I would like to show this experiment now in a larger scale. How can we see it on a larger scale? And where did I put my pointer? I think I have it here. Thank you. So maybe just to go on some structures. Maybe we saw at the beginning this kind of very sort of creative, chaotic forms. And for me, that's very interesting to see this kind of shapes. For example, in my region, I'm living close to the Alps. In Switzerland, we find this kind of structures every spring when snow is melting or when a glacier is releasing water. You find always this kind of forms. And most people are just seeing it and then they pass by. But if you actually stand there and just have the patience to look for 20 minutes, you will see how this kind of structure is permanent in a change process. And that's actually what is happening in all our huge river systems of the Amazon. Here in Asia, we have lots of rivers which are still in this permanent change and flux of really changing. And I think that's important to know. Even rivers which are here in ice, I often look down when I fly over. Here it was actually taken over Siberia, Russia. And then you can see these beautiful shapes and forms which are left here. These were all basically rivers and signs or left behind because when this process is starting again, it creates this new forms of shapes. And we find this like a kind of timeline. We find this kind of structures in nature. Water is actually showing us processes over time. And we usually have no consciousness about it because we live, our lifespan is like in nature, like a little fly of a day who is only living for a short time. But we have to learn also in looking at landscapes and looking also in our way how we interact with nature, also in our cities. We have to see the change process. And that's another point I'm often trying to tell my clients and also my students or people I work with. We are often so stuck in today, and we cannot imagine how 20 and 25 years from now would look like. And we are often surprised when we look 25 years back how our environment was 25 years. We often cannot remember anymore. And this is only in our lifespan. So water can actually tell us a lot about how that change process is actually always in a permanent way going on. Well, in Switzerland, there's this change process also very dramatically because we lose all our glaciers. And actually, this is just a place where there was a glacier, and it has been gone. It was one of the first official glaciers who died. Now, actually, we know that the next years, a lot of our smaller glaciers will disappear, which is really dramatic. And this change, looking at it from a positive side now, is of course very connected to temperature, to the climate question, stabilization, And water actually is a very, very sensitive measurement of that, how we behave in the environment. Water is most affected of human interaction. So change process and actually how we see the change process, water tries always to balance and to adapt, but we see how suddenly things really are affected very much in that. I don't want to talk too much today about climate change because that would be a totally different topic, but I think we often cover this, so I don't want to go into that. I want to show today really more about the qualities and positive effects on water. So it's very difficult to understand, and we sometimes need a little experiment to actually see this process which we have in a natural environment. And of course, it's always connected to Earth or to by gravity of erosion process, sedimentation process, but it's also connected to green structures like vegetation. And I mean, here you would think it's maybe a small scale thing like a moss or so, but in reality it's a real big forest. And it's water structures in a huge landscape, which are also in a permanent process of change. And I think where blue meets green, there is of course that what we try to do today in cities to try to copy or translate some of these principles of slowing down, keeping in evaporation, infiltration, slowing down the process, building it up, building it new. This is what we call maybe today a sponge city concept, or in Singapore we have this wonderful word ABC, word ABC, water guidelines, active, beautiful and clean. I will talk a bit more on that, but not too much in the details, but about the principles. So maybe let's do the next experiment. And the next experiment, I need again your help. Raymond Young, who is actually working with me on this kind of things, is a wonderful help. And also we have the assistance from the team from NUS Cities with us. So the next one, I have just 2 cylinders. By the way, this is also interesting. We can you see water? Probably when you are really aware about this, then and think about what you see only the cylinder, you see how the light is broken, you see the surface, you see the ground, but the water itself you cannot see. Only when water movements also you cannot see. Only when I put some color in, like I put some drops in, then you might be able to get a kind of idea. I will just try to do this. I just give some color in. I will just do it here on a first drop, and just let a drop fall in, and it's like a raindrop in something. Yeah, is it okay? Or should I go on this side? It's better? Maybe you could use the light for the background here, because sometimes it's better if you bring light on here, and I go here. Just put the light on here. It should work. Okay. Okay. Yeah? Good? Yeah, let's see. So I think with the background, we might be able to see it a bit better. Okay. Just wait for you. Come around. Okay. So I just let a drop fall in. Now, can you see there are some drops going deeper, some less deep. Now you can see there are some drops are interesting. This one is even like a little ring here. So I just go on this side. It's like now you can see there's a little ring going down, then it starts to fall apart. So even a drop in water creates very interesting forms. And that's actually what every raindrop is doing when rain is falling into a Actually, very beautiful. You should come. I don't know if you can from the top. Can you do that? I just try to show you this thing if we get a bit more close. Otherwise, though, the water is actually, or the color is just kind of amorph. Looks like a little bit mushrooms. The color is a little bit more heavy than the water. The particles in this color, so it starts to go down. That's the nearest you can go. Yeah. Okay, but if you do it from down here. Yeah, this one is very nice. And actually looks very interesting from the top. I will show you some photos on this. Now I do it here. It depends on the height of my drops. It needs the perfect height, and the height is actually depending because the drop is forming either this way or this way. Because of the surface tension, it's not a perfect ball, but it's actually like long, and it starts to do this, and when it hits the surface and it starts to be like this, it goes deep in and it creates a vortex. If it's the wrong moment, it will actually just flash, but otherwise it makes a very interesting form. So a drop is not what we usually see. It's a pulsation of an object which is always pulsating in these very interesting ways. And it's really fascinating to see how drops build forms. Yeah, now a lot of ring vortex come in. Yeah, can you see that? A lot of these little rings. What you can also try to do is, if you go further down, maybe you can. We have the problem that the cord is not long enough. Just go here. Yes, from here. Yeah.
Let's try. Yeah.
No, you cannot get it. Yeah, here. This one is going down. Yeah, it's okay. Some are go really deep. It depends how the drop. No, this one was good going down. This one as well. Wow. Okay, so this is the ring vortex phenomena. So I will also show later on a little bit larger. Now, what we do at this moment, we just let this one. Now we see the color is just spreading out, and I bring a little bit movement into that. So we got some help from Professor Vera making this under construction. Very good. So now I put some color again into it with a little needle, and we look how the water actually behaves, how the color behaves. Yeah, can we get closer? Yeah, very good. Okay, you see suddenly in this water structure that it is completely organized. Yeah, it is not chaotic anymore, but it is actually from when you look from the top, it is an enormous long surface which is completely structured and organized. Just a little bit more into this here. Okay, try to get close. Okay, good. Let's see if we. No, it's not working. I think it needs that. Yeah, okay. Now I do something else. I start to let some water go out. Yeah, you can open it a bit more. Thank you. Okay, good. Now close it a bit. Okay, good. So we see this turbulence actually creates an inner and inner axis. It's also interesting that every vortex and every surface of water is part of the globe, and the vertical is going directly to the center of the planet and to the zenith. So we put a little bit in. Can you let the water go out again? Okay, now you see the speed inside, right? Let it go out a bit more. Yes, and a little bit more. And now less. So you can let it dance a little bit. And now as soon as we reduce the turbulence in the outlet, it's getting slower. In a big tornado, basically the air movement outside is going up, and inside is speeding up and going down. And it's very, very quick. Yeah, open it again. Okay. So again, very interesting structured. And even here we can see the shape of that. Yeah. Maybe I just open the other one as well. I just need to pass by quickly. Okay, then we do it one more time. You can just let it go out. Now you see the air bubbles. Good. I'll just put this one here. Better? Good? But then they can, yeah, you can see it over here. Now I just put a little. Just do it one more time. We see the speed. We see actually also something which is now almost sucked in, a little particle going around here. We see the speed in the middle. And now you could start to open also this one a little bit here. Now it's getting in. Now you can see suddenly how the air is getting in. I'll open it a bit more. Yeah, now the air is sucked into the center. Okay, I think this is, with this, we have seen the basic principles of vortex structures. Vortex structures we find in many, many ways around the world, in small scale, in large scale. And I will probably now just let it go, because that's also something you can experiment very easy. You can just take a pot, turn it around, put some ink in, see how this structure is coming up. I'd just like to share with you now also some slides. And now we have to just change it again. So first, that's good. Thank you. So some first slides on the experiments with drops. So a drop falling in, and this is actually this little ring what we have seen. There was a lot of research done on the Max Planck Institute in Germany on this kind of inner structures, and this is just one example. Every drop who falls in water is full of forms and shapes. So the inner structure of a drop starts to change. And you have seen a little bit closer that this ring was not a perfect ring. It was starting to fall apart. And especially when such a ring vortex is getting to a different density or to a surface, this ring what makes all kinds of interesting structures and forms. I always find it fascinating as an artist, but I also was very interested in flow science and flow dynamics, especially with research institutes, to look at the inner richness of structures, which is something I find absolutely fascinating, to really look at water from a different perspective. Not just, say it's a substance, but it is full of surprises. We know that today we just know very little about the the rich things what water has. Water is very unnormal in a way. We learn this in school, but it's something we usually don't think about it, that the most density is when it's liquid by +4 degrees Celsius. And then it's spreading out again. That's why ice can swim. All other materials are getting more heavy when they are freezing, right? And they go down. If that would happen with water, we probably would not be on this planet, because this ice is covering, in the very cold seasons we had also on this planet, that life can exist below. Yeah, and actually, like the Bodensee is a very good example. We would have a permanent ice block down there. That is helping. Well, the shapes and structures of this drop, just to bring that to the end, is really most surprising and most interesting. So this is just our little drop as a change process, which is also forms. You can almost see forms which are looking like flowers or like jellyfish, or even you can find animals forms, earlier forms, like in the embryology, you find similar forms, like the first forms. That's really interesting. And the vortex in itself, most incredible. And we know we have the energy of one of these vortex structures of a hurricane is the energy of that what we use as humans on 1 year. This is just in one tornado. So enormous energy, and these forms and shapes, which are seen from space, and also how big these forms and shapes can be. Sometimes I'm not even believing that this is a real picture. I have to test it out, because I found it on the internet, but I'm not sure if it is real, because you can do it today. You can do a lot of things, but if it's real, then it's really incredible. And of course, the same things of this flow dynamics and vortex structures and so on, we have everywhere in life. We have it also below the ocean. We have it in seagrass. We have it in our coastal regions here. And these structures and forms is something which we usually are not aware of. But it's actually our living world is fully surrounding this. Now, I just would like to go maybe to the next and last experiment, and then we have to go over here. So I have to change again, and I just use here a plate of, I just have filled basically a basin, very shallow, maybe just 10, 15 millimeters of water. I did put in here water and glycerine. The reason why I did put glycerine in is because I wanted to slow it down. It would happen also when I have water, but it would just basically disappear so quickly. Okay, very good. Can you get close to it? Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. So it would happen actually so quickly that we would see it for a very short while, and then it would be gone. So the glycerine basically is changing the viscosity of this liquid. So it is actually slowing down. It's a bit kind of like oil. And glycerine is something we have in cosmetics and soaps and so on. And what I would like to do is now I just take a brush and I pull a straight line through this vessel. So I just do this. So you would say, so what? Nothing to see. And, yeah. And that's how nature works. Actually, a lot of things we cannot see. We have no clue what really happens. So what I will do now is I put a little bit powder. This is actually from a plant, a little moss we have in the Swiss Alps and also in Scandinavia. It's called lycopodium powder. It's actually the flowers, the seed, the pollen, and you see it's very sensitive. This little powder. I could also use flour, but flour is actually sucking in immediately, and this powder has a lot of etheric oils, and it will stay on the surface, right? So I just put this actually in here, And okay, I can see actually how the air condition works, because you see when I do this here, you can see. So it's very sensitive. It's actually showing something that the air is very related to water. Movements in the air have just a different proportion, but they behave in the same way, like water. It's a fluid, and I will show you pictures actually later on that what we see here, we see also in large scale in air. And air is like water, a very thin layer around this planet, very, very fragile. That's the place we live in. So what I'm doing now, I just do the same thing. I just go through this. I just put my brush in here, and then I just go one time through here. Isn't that interesting? Can you see it? Yeah. Okay. That happened before too, but we haven't seen it. Yeah. But now we can make it visible, and it's a beautiful form. Actually, if you see this a little bit more close, it's actually difficult now, because if we do it once again with students, we need a longer. We have to invest in a longer one. Okay, but it's most interesting to see this kind of shapes and forms, and maybe you could even come a bit closer and just make see how these inner forms and structures look like. Amazingly interesting. So what I do now, I do it one more time. I just do the same thing, and what it is basically that I put something like here, a resistance, and I pull it straight through. I could do it perfect with even a machine, because you might say, oh, he made a trick, he was a little bit doing this. I wasn't. I tried to do it really straight, and you can actually do it even with a machine doing totally straight movements through, and you would still see the same. So what I'm now doing, I just take the powder off. This lycopodium is just on the surface, so I actually just pull it up, and I pull it out here, and so I've collected everything on my newspaper, Straight Times, I think. So I put this down here, and what I do now, I just make it a little bit different. I just put the powder on one side. Oh my goodness, it's really air condition is pushing the powder on one side. Let's see. Now, what I try now to do is I just go along so that we only see one side. What happens to one side? So you see how this one is actually pulled in, already a little bit different forms. I will do it one more time with two lines. So again, it reacts rhythmically, left and right, left and right. So I just do another one again. I put two lines, and I go in between. So I have just two lines of this lycopodium powder stacking, or is basically on the surface of this liquid. And now I just go with this brush in the middle. Yeah, now we can see how these two lines are really interacting. Yeah, this one is pulled in, 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 And it's very interesting. I often use water even almost like a learning process about, for example, about diplomacy or about, how to have maybe two different opinions, how people actually interact. And I mean, it's so interesting because today we have so many conflicts. We have so many conflicts between countries, between mentalities, between the young and the older generation, between different backgrounds of culture. And usually we are not able actually to build something with two different opinions, to build something third, something new, something which is actually like building something. And water is actually showing us how that can be done. Because, I mean, I just was basically going through, even dividing these two lines more, then these two lines had to come somehow together to arrange them somehow, how they come together. And I think they made it really right, because they were saying, okay, I step back, I go in, I step back, I go in. So they had a kind of interaction of exchange, of letting the other accept to come in, and then please give me space for me to come in. So we create something new, and they created the most interesting structure and form, which was much more than only the two lines. I find it really fascinating, I mean, I often use this kind of things often before I have a conversation with two stakeholder groups who maybe have difficulties to communicate. Then you just do this little experiment and say, hey guys, look at this. What about if you try at least a little bit of that? Maybe you can learn and you can find a solution. And often it helps. It's quite surprising, because we often we need something to see, because we often in our mindset, we cannot imagine that things can be different. And I think this kind of experiments often help. I call it often fluid thinking, to come up with more creativity and more fantasy to solve challenges we have today. So maybe I just leave this last one and then we go back to the slides. Again, this is something you can do also, as you just have to go to a pharmacy or something to get a little bit glycerine and some water, and you can do it also on your kitchen table, and you need just this. You can also try with different powders, and then you just pull it through. Okay, now I just need to go back here. Thanks, Ray. Just go here, and now okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so now we start again with slides, and so the second part of that. Of course, it can be done more research and science, very perfect, and it of course we can also explain this with mathematics, with numeric flow simulations. There is a lot of science on that, how that actually starts to come up with. In German, we call it die Reinhold'sche Gleichung. It's a kind of vortex structure, which always comes up when there's chaos is starting. So there's a kind of structure and order which comes in, which has a very special way of reacting. And then you can see that this kind of very, very sensitive part here, that is starting to create actually this vortex street. And the vortex street can be perfect, can be actually very, very interesting in different shapes and different scales. And of course, it has also interesting because the forms you see are still in a permanent movement and a permanent change movement, but they are always around a center. And this kind of centers which are created can be stronger and stronger and could continue. And actually what you could see, and I just like to show you some bigger scales. This is 400 kilometers. That's actually our little brush here is now a volcano. This volcano is Jan Mayen, in North Atlantic. And as we learned, movement is always relative. We can also say our brush could stay and our little water table could move. And that's actually what is happening here. So the cloud field, the air is moving, and Jan Mayen is standing still. And you have all kinds of structures. What we often see, we often don't see it because we see only a little part on the sky, but when you go from space, we see a lot of forms which are related to such structures. They are always often behind an island, like you can see here, or you can see it here. I think this is the Canarian Islands here. This is Africa. You see even many vortex streets here. And of course, one of such turbulence here. So this kind of vortex turbulence is all around, is always there. And even if I'm moving like this through this room, behind me is a vortex street. So if I would put some dust in, you would probably see the same when you look from up here. So that's very interesting. And actually then seeing that often these fragile structures can, with certain conditions, get stronger and stronger. And we know that this word that we know from the chaos research, that the little wing of a butterfly can create on the other part of the planet a huge tornado, or when you see this, what is happening here, you can actually start to understand how complex and how strong this kind of structures are. So we see basically water structures now in air in a bigger scale. And I always find it fascinating to look at shapes and forms as an artist or as a designer. Because very often, if you just see what we often do, straight lines, which have also lots of reasons, because we want to be quick from A to B, we want to be efficient, we want to get rid of problems of water, for example, when it's polluted. That's how we created all our drainage systems. But today we have, of course, more clean water. We can also do it different. There is always this kind of things we can put actually beside. And I think Ray was helping me to put this words in here. Singular, multi, diverse, fast, slow, or taking time. Slow is maybe even the wrong word, because it's not meaning that we are too slow. It just needs the right proportion, the right time. Monofunctional, multifunctional, plain, complex, and so on. And sometimes we could even say a bit boring, not so much fantasy. When we bring this kind of what we learn from nature, it can be much more interesting. So just to build this up, why art is also important for engineers and also for architects as an inspiration. I like often to look at guys like this one. Leonardo was an inventor. He was amazing creative, and if you look at his biography in his life, at the end he was writing several books about water, only observing water structures, looking how water is behaving. He was one of the first scientists who really started to look very carefully. He had also kinds of ideas about what we see already today about circulation, about breathing systems. He had all kinds of interesting structures, which are also a little bit crazy from today's point of view. But he was very, very interesting in the way how he actually looked more as he was more a system thinker on water structures. And I find this very fascinating, and I think everyone can do this. I mean, for example, if I see people here in Asia being on a coastline, and you look what is happening when water is flowing back into the ocean or into the sea. And when I see kids, when they grow up and have the chance to experience this, they learn every minute something very important. They really observe. It is funny. It is often interesting. It is maybe also muddy sometimes. And I think it's so important that even in the city, we give kids the opportunity to explore things and to discover things. That's why parks and gardens, where you have a more setting where you can get close, you can see butterflies, you can see dragonflies, you can see even a frog. It's so important to have that actually early experience, because it gives actually to your whole life a kind of sigma, a kind of direction. And if you don't have that, it's very difficult to teach later, why is nature important and why are things about biodiversity are so important and so complex. So I often do this with my teams, or I did it with my teams. I think Efi, you were also taking part one time. Sometimes my colleagues were thinking, a crazy idea, why to do this? But then after, they were so excited, and actually I was always seeing that a team was learning so much on one weekend that they could use it for years to be really motivated, to know why we do things. And then they can also design great projects. They can do projects we just have seen this year's opening up, or Bijan or Mokyo Park is an example, because you can really observe and learn. So in my studios, I try to bring this very often in, but I also try to do it in teams. Here also at the university, we try to do it. These are students, I think, from this year, MLA studio or the NUSCs, and I think also this one is a very nice film. I would highly recommend that if you like to go a little bit into that. Henk Ovik was also sharing this in my class. Also that, for example, coastal protection or understanding how the interaction is between land and water, for example, in the Netherlands, was actually studied by real mock-ups, real models. So here, when you just look in the internet on that, you will see that whole film about how structures change, and that what actually happens over thousands of years. You can do it actually in 2 or 3 days in these experiments. Well, I also like to make drawings with my students, to find out how are forms of water structures. How can you find them also later in art? What kind of inner dynamic is in a vortex structure? And we often do this kind of form drawings in ways that we see that turning inside out or outside in is also a process we find very often in animals. We find it, but also we find it a lot in water. So that's a very big help actually to get in a kind of a fluid thinking mode of doing it. I often do it also with clients, or sometimes also with bigger groups. And the correlation between little drawings and experiments and seeing then how nature actually works is very obvious and very interesting, and it opens up mind, it opens up discussions, and it is very helpful. I will share a bit more now on this. Now, some first little examples of work, how to combine housing, open space planning, and art. This one is in Tübingen, and I like to show it today because the architect, my friend Joachim Eble, has his 80th birthday today. So at this moment when I'm speaking here, they just have a birthday party there. So to his honor, I was thinking I should show this. And here at the opening day, so this is just part of that landscape, what we did between the housing. At the opening day, we did modeling with all the kids and all the parents who actually are moving in there. Today is that was the opening day, and actually this housing estate is now even got very many awards and is now under protection because it was the first eco-city project in Germany for this one. So Tübingen. With the same architect, also very early on, this is a project we did in the 90s last century, collecting rainwater, harvesting it, bringing it into green cleansing biotopes on the way down, having a cistern, using it from here. And actually here, because we have sandy soil, after cleaning it, we infiltrate it into the ground. That was an early project where we started to collect the water from the rooftops already and collect it in an interesting way. We also used outside and inside opportunities of celebrating water. So this harvested rainwater actually is used here inside for green areas to create a kind of atmosphere, of an inner atmosphere, which is livable, with restaurants, with cafes. And what we try to do here, together with Transsolar, there's one teacher actually also teaching here, Wolfgang Kessling is actually teaching Yeah. ISD studio at this moment with Nirmal. Also here. He also gave a lecture right here, right? So together with him and his firm, we created this kind of waterfalls here to bring fresh air from outside to filter it and then blow it in. So here, me looking much younger than I'm today, working on glass inlays and working also, you see a lot of these structures and are very familiar to that, what we have seen. And we try to use it as an art feature also in this building. Another art piece I like to share here before I then go to more other different scales is a sculpture in Ann Arbor, a sculpture in front of the municipality center of here in Michigan, US. And actually this one was also interesting. It's inspired by these water structures and wow, what is here? No sound, please. No sound. Okay, no sound? Okay, I just go back. Well, I just maybe start here again, this one, okay. I mean, this is just basically a water structure which was then also worked on models and then on computer 3D models. And then we had basically a roboter doing all the shapes and working it out. So I'm not saying that technology and all what we have today with computers, we should not use. We can actually combine it, absolutely. So this kind of hands-on experiments and computer technology and numeric flow simulations and all that can actually work very well. But it should not be only one side. You have to bring it actually together. That's what we try to do here. That was actually done at GSD. So we see the structures, we see the forms, and I think especially working with science, with art, with technology, there are lots of new opportunities we have today. Also here, this one was also generated basically by experimenting, hand drawings, and then computer machine things so that we actually cut out special forms and shapes. This is actually a part of the IBA-Emscher Park projects in the Ruhr Valley of Germany, of North Germany, where we have had all the mining, the dirty mining structures. You still see some of these mining towers here. So many of these projects have water features, and this was one of the water features, and it was basically the entrance to a very big park. So also to celebrate here water in an interesting way, to show it, to show the beauty, to make people aware about that they really wonder, wow, how interesting can structures be, how rich are wave structures, how much is it suddenly showing how sunlight is reflected. So all this actually can be done and can be very interesting. One example was, for me, a very, very big highlight was working with Renzo Piano on Potsdamer Platz in Berlin before 2000. And we did a lot of the experiments in full-scale mock-ups, full-scale for the water testing, having standing waves and wave structures. And this is all collected and harvested rainwater, which we also use for the plants in these buildings or shopping malls and toilet flashing for the Daimler Chrysler headquarters. Now, maybe one more step, working with these experiments. I use these experiments, as I mentioned already, to bring different opinions together or overcoming conflicts or showing the third way of bringing two opinions to something new. And it also was interesting for me to use it in involvement or in participation or in including people in decisions in a way that people bring in ideas and to get actually to know the genius loci of locals. This one is an experiment I did actually you mentioned the project in the beginning. That was Portland, Oregon. It was actually Tanner Springs Park. And that's how we started. We had about 300 citizens coming together. And we started actually by water phenomena. And then suddenly people were thinking, well, I think I came here to defend my opinion. No, I said, no, it's not about that. It's really, let's just come together and look at water and then think about what could be the future of a place. And it changed totally the mindset of people. And we had actually big success. You see, our people had always these blue jumpers. Then we made these experiments, and then we had discussion groups. And it was so creative that these people, these 300 citizens, they were bringing so interesting ideas into this process that we were able to come with the kind of atmosphere and ideas what people brought in. We could make a very, very interesting design. And it's not so that citizens always have maybe a fixed opinion that you can say, okay, I just take it. It would be stupid. But to actually understand a little bit what people want and what they are longing for, what they are dreaming of. And out of that, you as a professional planner you have to translate it. You have to, as a technicians, you have to translate it into technology, which can be done. Because often people have big illusions, and you have to also bring it to the ground and say, this can be done, but not this. And so I try and work it out. But the citizens were so involved in this and so much standing behind that when Portland was getting short of money, they had also at that time when we were before building in a big crisis where they had to shut down projects. This project was not shut down because in the city parliament, a lot of people came to the final when it was actually on the election about if they should do the project. There were so many people in that no one had the courage to say no to this project. So we get 100% support, and then we could build it. And it's still today, I think, a very nice and beautiful project. So at the end, I would just like to share another experiment or another thing where we also had this kind of method, starting with water experiments and opening up a discussion. That is Queens Botanical Garden in New York. So it's actually situated here. By the way, a lot of firefighters, when we were starting and building here, it was actually when 9/11 happened, and a lot of firefighters came from this place. A lot of them had really big problems also with their health later on. And at that time, we had this part of the Botanical Garden in Queens. And what we also did here, and still today they have it on their website, and we just found it today in preparation of this talk. So they still have from this first sessions, from our meetings, here are the people, here are the kids, they were involved, there were elderly people in that, the first drawings and sketches, and they came basically out of this question about what would be right. They wanted to have good solutions for water in this. And we came up with solutions about thinking on different master plan concepts. We did at that time a lot of sketching and drawings. We came up with water systems where we have the water storage, where we bring it in. We even use the car parking as a runoff and catchment system and treat it and bring it down. So the aim was actually to have a zero runoff from this space, and we did it. We collected everything, and we basically used the water in the recycling system. So, for example, the main building here, which is the visitor center and the bureaucratic buildings and a big shelter here and a rooftop here under construction, where all the wedding people come to have events, is functioning so that we collect all the water from here. We bring it back. We have a circulation which is actually going through this project. And finally, the water then actually is going through the building and then out again later. So some details about how that looks like. So here is how the buildings look like, and the whole building, so architecture, open space, using this space, the whole programming is completely integrated with water topics. Of course, they have 4 seasons here, so it is very beautiful. The rooftop, how it changes the colors. And it was the first LEED Platinum project in New York City. So we had at that time the Mayor Bloomberg, who was actually opening it. It was interesting. He's a very small person. Very, very, very nice conversations we had at that time. And this is how it looks actually today. So you see a shelter where you can sit outside. It is protecting from rain. It's also protecting a little bit from sun. And when it rains a lot, we have a waterfall. And at the moment, we are just working also here for NUS on a master plan. I would actually wish that we would use the open space and the outer space between buildings and gardens and streets and walkways and shelters where people can stay a bit more, that we could be more active here also for our campus. I think it can be done, and we should do it. So this is maybe an interesting example, because now a lot of weddings are actually taking also place outside here. This is the shelter. So this is then, of course, people use the place quite a lot. They do yoga here. They do exercises in the morning, and it's a lot going on in this Queen's Botanical Garden. And the water is all around. It is connecting everything. And of course, we have also lots of festivals. Queens is the part of the world where most languages are spoken on one spot. And it's a real mix of all the world society coming there. It's a very, very interesting place. So maybe just something to see about how the water is running off. We have some cleansing biotopes also here where the water is filtered before it is collected. They even do advertisement and show that this is an eco-friendly car parking. And this is the maintenance they do, all done by volunteers. And maybe at the end, I will come to the end in a way that I say, actually, this working with water process and with water structures, it can also be used a lot for working with municipalities. I often work with towns and with municipalities about thinking about more sustainable solutions or more resilient solutions for climate adaptation, climate mitigation. And often these kind of things, what we have done here, are often a kind of mind opener or door opener for new ideas. And I think with that, also another future vision workshop in a city in the Czech Republic. I will end with this photo of a project in China we did, and it was beautiful to see, how this man is actually using just his brush and writing a poem with water. I find it fascinating because half an hour later, it's gone. But at this half an hour, the poem stays. And that's, I think, also this kind of metaphor or this kind of quality what water has. It has a certain time where we see it, then it's disappearing. And then we have to think about it and how to create it. So it's the most sensitive element, which needs a very deep understanding. But I think we can really do it to unlock the secrets of water, and it can inspire us to shape solutions for tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof, for that very inspiring lecture. I would now like to invite the moderator for the evening, Ms. Evie. Evie is currently an adjunct lecturer in landscape architecture at NUS, as well as a research module coordinator at FCL at the Singapore ETH Center. She graduated from Harvard Graduate School of Design with a Masters of Architecture degree. Before getting into research and academia, Evie worked at Woha Architects prior to joining Atelier Dreiseitl. She had the privilege of working in both the Atelier Singapore and German office and is thankful for the strong friendship she made with the wonderful people there, including, of course, Herbert. She's delighted to have this public conversation with, in her own words, an ex-boss turned dear old friend. Please join me in welcoming her, and I would like the audience to now ask their questions. You can just raise your hand and speak up because there's ceiling mics, which will catch your voice.
Thank you for having me as a moderator. It's really a very, very awesome opportunity to be in touch again with Herbert. I only knew Herbert back in 2010. That's a long time ago. And at that time, he was my boss, obviously. And our office was extremely small and grew over time. But from the get-go, Herbert has this, whatever the viscosity, his love, his wonder, his sense of beauty, his sense of experimentation was there from the get-go. He wanted us to really have this exchange between the German office and the Singapore office. And I remember it was quite a treat for the Singapore office to go to Venice, the group of them. And I think really he wanted us to experience what he experienced. And I think that's something that sometimes is missing in our education. It's all very cerebral, but we forget about the bodily experience. We forget about what water feels like. We forget about that sense of wonder, that sense of awe. That doesn't really, you can't really put it in words. You can't really kind of turn it into a theory. And so I really appreciate that about Herbert. Even tonight's lecture, I thought was very, very thoughtful. How he interjected between experiments, his experience, and all of that. So I just want to thank you for that, Herbert. And I'd like to open to the rest of the people here for questions, if there are any. If there are no questions, I have some questions myself. So Herbert, I'm I notice also from working with you that participatory design is a very big part of it. It's coming back into view now, where everybody realizes that, design is not just a master designer doing something and taking it on, but it is including the community that will be using it, the users. It's also including the stakeholders, the decision makers into the making of it. And we see that in your, stakeholder meetings, even your diplomacy, even in you making this one-to-one scale mock-ups, which is incredible now. If you think about it, it's really hard to convince clients to actually say, we're going to spend some money to do some one-to-one mock-ups so that we can invite some of our community to join. When did it start? Have it always been from the beginning? And do you sometimes face sort of rejection against this, or do you think that we should be more bold as designers to even try to suggest this? Maybe your experiences in different parts of the world with this as well.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way of making projects, coming up with new ideas, and you have to be very sensitive and very smart how to do it, because first of all, it has to be different in different parts of the world because of different mindset, different cultures. I wouldn't say it's easier to do in America, for example, because people are very much outspoken and so on. And it's a kind of, the whole thing about involving citizens is a fragile balance between leadership and letting people come in with their ideas and balancing this. Because it's very often that we have wrong expectations. And I would say planners or people who are doing this, or also the clients or let's say the population who is coming. And usually, and that's also in America very often the case, that people come with the expectations, now I have to complain. I'm always against this, what the city is doing or the different bureaus are doing. They always make it wrong, so now I have the chance to tell it. And you have absolutely to be very strict to cut that out and say, that's not the right place. You can just go again. I'm also very brutal sometimes. I say, no, that's not the topic. That's not what we are talking about. And it's also not about coming up with opinions where you have only one opinion, you come in, and this also can happen, for example, in Germany a lot, that people come and have, for example, a very, very strong party who has a very, very clear agenda, and they want to get this agenda getting through. It's often older people, so often people 60 plus. Yeah, and they think now they can bring their frustration and everything. That's also something you have to change. So I often open up the process in a way that I make very unexpected gatherings. I break the groups so I don't get people who have only one opinion in one corner and then the others. I mix it. and can be done in many different ways. I often do, for example, in America or Europe, I give everyone who comes in a little Swiss chocolate, and they all have a different color. So I said, now the red ones, where are they? And so you suddenly have a big mix of that. And another point, I think, but I can only mention some, is also that it has to be very clear what is the frame of this. So what we are not talking about. And involvement or participation really needs to be so that you get all these negative energies somehow under control. And that can be done. That can really be done. And of course, also from the other side, you have to be ready to let go and also to be able to hear and listen to criticism. It's also important. I mean, it's very important that we hear it. We don't have to follow it, but that we say, okay, it's important that in modern society will have opinions and things, and you have to listen to it, and you have to get the arguments, and then you have to bring it into a discussion, and that often is then very, very constructive and fruitful. And what I have done many involvement projects, usually with very good results. It is different in America, it's different in Europe. Also in Europe, it depends where you are. If you're in Italy, it's different, or in Norway, or Sweden, or Finland. I also had it there. People are very quiet. And in Asia, again, it's also very different. And I think it's a learning process also for all. And what the main point is actually what the positive aspect is, that I think in our societies all around the world, people are more and more used that the government or the let's see, organizations, like here in Singapore, maybe Public Utility Board, or they will do it. So it's not my job. So they don't care of things. They think someone is doing it, and actually I think it is more a question in future that people have to make steps to see this world, especially water, is something which can be risky. It is something where I have to put my part with my children. I have to educate them. If I cross in Bijan Amokyo Park, I have to see if the weather condition okay or not. I have to learn how to behave with risks. And I think you can even take it further if you think about when we talk about a city within nature. We have to learn how to behave in the right way, how to work with otters, with monkeys, and all these kind of things. The wildlife is actually coming in.
Absolutely.
And that's something you can only learn if you expose yourself or also the society into a kind of dialogue.
Yeah, I thought it was really beautiful when at the beginning you talked about, when you said a disaster, when people are dealing with disaster, actually it's just nature opening up. It's just that we are not aware of the scale of time and the scale of geography to understand that and to accept that. And then you really brought us on a multi-scalar journey here. From that view, you then brought us to test out water and droplets. And I think that's just really beautiful. And I think it's amazing that your work is so multi-scalar as well, and very, very multidisciplinary, right? You go all the way from art. And I just want to say that this thing about participatory planning, and I think it's just your personality and your respect for people and your true curiosity for people. And when we're doing Bishan Park, for example, you're very opportunistic about participation. When we're doing Bishan Park, the playground, for example, we said we're not going to design every single part of it because we're going to get a school to come in, and the school children are going to be the ones to then design that wall. Yeah. And it's actually put into the project. Yeah. And likewise with the planting strategy, we said we're going to have a phasing planting strategy. And then we did the test for the bioreach, which was unheard of. Like usually as designers, we think that we need to already have it. It's when we pass it to the client, it has to be completed. The entire design has to be completed. But that aspect of how do you put change? How do you put adaptation into your project and get your clients buy-in for that is really incredible. And I think that's something that we can learn as a society.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. My observation also in Singapore is that the younger generation is more and more less ready to take risks. So everything has to be safe. Everything has to be totally organized. And I think innovation often needs a kind of risk. I don't find risk in a way that it is a disaster risk, but certain things we have to try, and I would call it to optimize it. I remember when we did Vision on Mokyo Park, and because it was never done in this part of the world, bioengineering or testing out places where we avoid erosion. There was big discussions at that time. I wanted to even test it out here at NUS, and they said it takes 2 years to get the approval to make a test arranged. I said, well, forget it, that's too long. So we have to do it on place. And a lot of people at that time said to me, well, it doesn't sound good, because if you make a test, it means you as a planner that you don't know how it works. And then we have the risk. And I say, no, it's actually we do something together. We optimize it. We know, and nature actually is in a way that we can work on the frame condition, but we can never exactly say how a plant will grow and how it will behave. So we have to adjust, we have to find out, we have to test out things. And it's also with new parks or with new retention facilities. I mean, Lynn is just sitting here. We just have seen a wonderful one, which was just opened, I think, a month ago, right? To see also how that is actually something where it has to be, one has to see how much sediment is coming in, how do we have to do the maintenance. All this is actually adapting to get more and more close to that, how it can work. I think this behavior, to think that everything can absolutely controlled and be managed, is something we have to give up. I give one example. You have seen probably what happened in East Europe this year about the floodings and everything, and also in Austria and also in Germany. In my city even, we had lots of floodings. And we are coming to a point where we have such extreme weather conditions now, of extreme storms, that the capacity of the infrastructure cannot handle it anymore. So we have to come up with solutions that the streets can be flooded periodically. If we have too much water, then we have to say this street will be a floodplain. And so all the buildings and entrances have to be built different, higher, and it might be times where cars have to be taken away. It's also in Copenhagen, and people have to learn to adapt their lifestyle to situations where it is risk, and we have to deal with this risk. And I think that's something where, for example, involvement and participation is very important. By the way, also, I mean, water is as common good. It is. We are all actually are connected to it, right? And we have to take also responsibility and ownership to keep it clean and so on.
Let me see if anybody has a question around the room. Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned at the beginning about time spent in Sahara. Then you talked about how you miraculously are you sure what is the impact of the time going in Sahara?
You mean the time?
In the Sahara?
Yeah, right.
Share a bit of inspiration.
Yeah.
How did it sort of also influence some of the other things you did?
A good question, though. I just repeat it because people might have not heard it. Is what my experience in the Sahara, why I did it, and what I have seen. I think that's something I personally think is very important, also for us as humans and as planners. For me, my inner spiritual life and my meditation is something for me important. And for me, it was a very, very important time to come up with new ideas and to readjust my life and my aims, what I want to do, how I want to relate to other humans and the environment. And it was for me a very deep rooted spiritual experience. That was, I think, for me a time. It's like when you are a monk, a Buddhistic monk or a Christian monk or whatever. religion you are in, and you take a retreat and you take a time out for inner meditation. And especially water is forcing us all the time to see the other dimension, which is behind only the physical substance. So for me, it was a very good learning process.
There's another question.
May I know?
It's okay.
Okay. May I know which project was your first project? Like maybe something that people so small scale that they don't even know about, and how people's first reception of your idea of playing with water and integrating water with nature more, like how it was accepted by the clients or even the public versus what we have now, since people already know what you do and they respond better to it. May I know the difference between?
I did not hear it very well because I have hearing problems. Sorry. Ching, maybe you have to say it one more time. Or can someone explain to me, because I didn't hear it very well.
Okay. Sorry, I was asking about how your first project went versus the projects
My first
that you...
project? Or,
yeah. I'm not sure if it's a really small project, almost like a backyard design kind of thing, which we would think that nowadays that's how the designers kind of start off with, I guess. But then as compared to how you pitch your ideas now and how people are more receptive to your designs because of the brand that you've created.
You mean the first project I have shown, the one for...
She wanted to know, when you...
Sorry, I asked you because
it's okay.
I have hearing problems.
I will try and interpret. She wanted to know what was the first project that you got, that you were commissioned, and how that differs, when you first got that project, versus now when you pitch to clients, the kind of project. How is the reception? What is the process different when you relate to that client versus now? So I guess, did I get it right?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, my first project was actually in my hometown, and my very first project was I did was actually before 1980, and I started my office 1980, and it was actually they were asking, there was a kind of small competition to create a little garden with something for blind people, for people who cannot actually see. And so I was thinking about a smell and touch garden. And in that, I said, as orientation, I create a fountain, because the sound of the fountain gives blind people orientation. So in this, that was interesting how I came to the design process, because I was getting to know blind people. There's a club of blind people, like you also have in Singapore. So I did communicate with them and said, do you have regular meetings? They said, yes, we have regular meetings. And would you mind if I do an artistic modeling exercise with you? Because they said, yes, that's great. We love that. So I brought clay in one room, and there all these blind people came in, and I was always trying to prepare myself, closing my eyes. How would I model a wall, a square, and this, and we did it with them together, just with clay, and it was such a fun. It was so interesting because we shared, we gave things to the next one, and they touched it, and it was like communication without eyes, and it helped me a lot to design my first project. So I found a very kind of form of doing things in a very unexpected way, So that was my first project. So I'm always...
Raymond just pulled it up.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is one of the guys, he's a blind person here. So you see me here, and I'm actually showing him the fountain. So he was touching it, and he was listening to it. And it was such a joy. And some of these people were still, one was still a friend today. So that's a long time now. He's an old person. So and this is actually, you see, there's membranes, And this membrane actually is like a sound membrane, and behind here is something like this one makes like this, and and it's and then it goes out, and there is a cleansing biotope here. So already in the very first beginning, I was thinking about how can I bring art and sustainable technique and bioengineering solutions together. It was 1980, and it got an award, and of that was my starting point. So from there I could start the next project. I have actually I was lucky. I had never to take any loan from a bank. So every project I reinvested and made the next one a little bit bigger. So that was my background on that. Yeah. And today, I think it's often that clients I'm now creating more, I'm more doing advice to cities. So often I get questions. For the moment, I'm working for the city of Leipzig, which is a real interesting city. Johann Sebastian Bach, the composer, was from this city. And it has a very beautiful it's a very modern city, very much art. A lot of famous artists are there. And they have a lot of water in the city, and they want to reopen it and they want to shape it. So I'm basically working with the mayor's office to help for the entire city how to change and how to make things. So I'm not doing the actual planning, but I'm showing the opportunities and helping them to come up with competitions for other offices.
Yeah, I visited. It's really beautiful, the square, and then the Kirche where Johann Sebastian Bach was.
It's amazing place. So this is more what I'm doing now, and so basically I'm not doing it much advertisement. We have a website, and people are basically coming to us. But we have a small team, and one of them is here. It's Ray.
I have a follow-up question from her. You've worked in multiple skills. Your office has also grown and shrunk and grown. What I also realized is that you're extremely collaborative, and you are you're very adaptive in the sense that whenever you need a certain expertise, you're open to learning, you're open to hiring. So did everybody hear that? So for example, working with a hydrologist, our in-house hydrologist was quite a treat when I was working in Germany, and that I thought was a game changer for us that we have a hydrologist. And I heard from your podcast with Normal that you actually took on biology. So then could you reflect a bit on that experience of yours as you hire, as you bring in collaborations with whether it's other artists, whether it's engineers, with Renzo Piano, with bringing in-house. What was it like?
I was always interested to think about what we have to do as planners, as architects, as landscape architects, as artists, as engineers. The best is actually if we bring different disciplines together. It depends on the job, but very often I was thinking when I work with water, I have to have all these different disciplines either in-house. So one of the guys, Stefan, is still today is in our team. When I say our team, it's now run by my junior colleagues. I actually gave them totally freedom to continue because I didn't want to be stuck in a company being 70 years old and still being the CEO. And I think the next generation has to really come up with some new ideas and take over. And that's one thing to have in the team different disciplines and have crossover. I think there's also more a question what we have to do today. We have to be good in our subject, but we also have to know how other topics have to join. And cross-disciplinary work is often people talk about it, but often it's not really done very well. And the other thing is, of course, that I was always trying to work with science, with other engineering skills, and so I was asking the best people to come and to join and to do joint workshops and projects. I think that's the future. Also, we have to do much more.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing Bishan Park, you also got the university involved, right? To do the hydraulic model.
Right. and we had experts on bioengineering, for example, from Germany we brought in. I was not satisfied with the engineers we had at that time. So I said, no, this bridge cannot be done like this. So I brought even an engineering solution from a very good, innovative bridge designer. So that's why in Bishan Amoke Park you have these very elegant bridges. Yeah, I mean, that's important.
Any more questions? Yes.
Testing. Hi, can you hear? Okay. Hi, my name is Yichuan. So I'm a final year chemical engineering student here in NUS. So I just wanted to say that it's a very insightful talk, and with all the experiments that you showcased. So I realized that some of these things actually are quite relevant to what I'm studying, such as fluid mechanics. So my question is, what are some of like the engineering principles and theoretical concepts that you make use of in your projects? So like for instance, the Bishan Amoke Park, like do you do any like what are some of like the main calculations you make use of when you're designing such systems?
So maybe
yeah. So he really appreciated the experiments and all that. He said it also resonates with, because he's studying chemistry and he's studying fluid dynamics, and then he asked, like, for some of the projects that we do, do we do any of this hydraulic modeling? Is that the right answer?
Yeah,
do
yes.
Any hydraulic modeling? Did we bring in the science of it? How? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, because the sound down here is so that I sometimes hear like the echo and so on. In my hearing, I have hearing aids, so I have problems to hear. I really apologize. Not about disrespect to your question. I think it is probably really, I mean, Bishan Amoke Park was a kind of an interesting process for us to come up with all the ideas, but also to make the execution of that. Of course, we had to we had to look for numeric flow simulation. We had to look into science, where is actually water aggressive? Where do we have sedimentation? We had all kinds of eventual scenarios what would not work. So we had to take that all into account and to think about how could we avoid this, or what might be risky things. So where to do it, and so we were thinking a lot about solving problems actually, and therefore we did need science. We also needed science about questions about which plant is growing how fast, how is the root systems, so how strong can the roots be, what kind of material can we bring in, can we use gabions with plants. So we had about 10 different types of river banks on the test reach. And so that finally we could decide which one we want to do. We were surprised how fast plants grow here. So we were then more picking the plants who don't grow so fast. Before coming from Europe, we were thinking we need plants who grow fast. That's our problem always. Here's the problem totally different. So we did learn a lot, and of course we did need a lot of research and science on that. And I think that's still ongoing. I think now PUB and NParks, they are permanent, also improving things, and probably they know much more than I do now because they have so much more projects. I think that's always, I'm asking colleagues here, what's the next generation? I'm always happy, how things develop here.
Yeah, I remember we brought in Gucci Min, who was like the horticulturalist. She wrote this 101 plants of Singapore, so she was like the expert, and she was picking the plants for us, and we tested it in the test region. Oh, that one's not working, let's switch it out. Exactly. So that was an amazing process to be part of.
We had the Nature Society, we had lots of people involved.
How are we doing on time? Donna? We're good on time? Okay. One last question, maybe? One last question. Yes, Anna, please.
Thank you. It's more like a comment. My name is Anna. I'm from Costa Rica. Thank you for the lecture. It was really inspired as a professional, also as the mayor in my city. You were talking about how you combine the local governments, the stakeholders, the community. I like it really much because when you get the community involved, it's so precious what they can bring to the table. We're saying also that you don't have to listen to everything. That's true. Many people have no idea what they want. I think it's our job as professionals to shape those ideas and shape it in the way they can get what they really need and not what they want. And it's important also because when you engage the community, they learn to appreciate what you're doing and how to take care best of it and how to teach outsiders to also take care of that community, of that building, of that landscaping, and teach also the lessons, how you get to there and what comes next. So thank you so much for your lessons. It's really valuable.
That's absolutely right.
Yes. Thank you for that comment. I guess with that, maybe should we give Herbert another round of applause? And thank you so much. Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you, Prof. Herbert, for that very amazing lecture. I mean, I've seen these experiments once, but every time I see it, I feel more like, excited and inspired. That's the right word for it. So thank you, Prof. Herbert, for this very inspiring lecture. Thank you, Ms. Evie, for that really beautiful moderation. I think we heard even more deeper insights from Prof. Herbert's work. Thank you, everyone, for joining for the lecture. Special shout out for Raymond, Joyce, and Joy for helping with this complex setup. It is not easy, I tell you. Yeah. So we do have 2 lectures coming up in November, which we'll be posting up on our social media soon. So if you're interested in our upcoming lectures, please do sign up for our mailing list. And thank you for joining us in this Friday evening, and hope you have a lovely weekend ahead of you. Thank you.